Okay, I'm going to send some brochures around here. And my name is Bill McClanahan, and I'm the director at Janus House here in Corvallis. And really appreciate you guys taking the time to serve on this committee and listen to our request again for our services at Janus House. The brochure that's going around describes the program that we have at the Janus House. Our board of directors is the Mental Health Association of Benton County. And the Mental Health Association of Benton County has worked for over 50 years to promote an awareness of mental illness and a concept of mental health in the community. And in the early 1980s started a program called Janus House, which has existed since then in our current location at 5th and Western. We serve people with a serious mental illness and people who have been hospitalized for either schizophrenia or bipolar illness or a combination of the two. Most of our clients have been in a psychiatric hospital and are being released back into the community following that psychiatric hospitalization. Occasionally, individuals who we serve are people who are at risk of psychiatric hospitalization. They've gone off their medications or begun to experience increased symptoms of a mental illness in the community and gotten into some sort of crisis that has caused them to need the support and services that we provide at Janus House. Those support and services include housing, basic shelter. The goal of the program is to help these people move on to independent living or return to independent living. Quite often people with a mental illness never develop the skills that it takes to live independently, maintain an apartment or a living situation, or they lose those skills because of the symptoms of their illness. We know that well over half of people who are homeless in the United States have some form of a mental illness. Quite often people with mental illness lose housing situations because of their behavior and things like not keeping a living situation clean enough for a landlord to tolerate, or disruptive behaviors that disturb the neighbors or cause concern. I'm sure most of you have probably experienced that kind of situation or heard of that kind of thing. People with mental illness that is untreated often disrupt the community in a lot of different ways, businesses and parks, and put quite a burden on emergency services, the police and fire and ambulance and the emergency room. And Janus House works to step in and help those people before those services and the community are impacted in such a terrible way. While clients live at the Janus House, we work with them on medication management. We know that psychiatric medications are remarkably effective in lessening the symptoms of mental illness and allowing people to live with really what is a lifelong illness, but live successfully and cope with it. They need to keep taking their medications, and it's often very difficult to convince them that they need to take medications. And once they begin a course of medications, the medications often need to be adjusted, increased, and lowered depending on the symptoms. We also work with them on what we call living skills, again, the things that it takes for them to maintain an apartment in the future. It's very important to us that people move on through the Janus House program and live independently again so that others can take their place. We know that a psychiatric hospitalization right now is well over $1,000 a day, and the cost of that hospitalization is borne by taxpayers, because people with mental illness most typically don't have private insurance or any resources to pay for it. So one person in the hospital is $365,000 a year, and we manage to serve an average of about 45 clients in the program. So if you do the math, the savings that a program like Janus House can represent to the community and taxpayers is really very significant and dwarfs our annual budget by many, many, many times. So we feel like we're a cost-effective program. We are asking for $12,000. For the past several years, our grant request has gone for daytime staffing at the Janus House. For many, many years, we have been largely single-staffed at any given time at the Janus House, and the demands on staff are pretty great, especially during the day when clients need to be transported to appointments with their psychiatrist or therapy groups, or taken out to buy clothing, or see their medical doctor, those kind of things. It really takes more than one person there at a time to run a program like this. And we've been lucky enough to receive United Way funding for the last many years, really. And now our focus is using United Way funding to provide one extra staff person during the day at very minimal remuneration. We have just a total of 9 people working around the clock at the Janus House, and that's a lot of responsibility for just one staff person. Unfortunately, we all know that this country and the state of Oregon in particular has never been able to fund mental health services adequately. Deinstitutionalization, people leaving the hospital and returning to the community began a long time ago, but the services have never really followed people into the community. So we're trying to do our part to do that. A very important kind of sub-program that we have at the Janus House is a crisis respite intervention service, which is a single bedroom that we offer to the community, contracted to Benton County Mental Health, where we're able to take referrals for people in crisis and provide them temporary shelter and services, and are most often successful in preventing further crisis or causing them to need to be hospitalized. And the average stay for those folks is several days to a week or two while they stabilize and return to an independent living situation. When people lose housing, besides the problems of homelessness, it's very difficult for them to find another place with a track record. So we really try to stop that from happening, stop the disruption that happens to families, the concern and the fear and so on that happens to people with mental illness and people in crisis. So that's our program, and we appreciate you guys listening to us and considering our proposal. I really welcome anybody who has questions beyond tonight or would like to take a look at our program to give me a call and ask me the question or set up a time to come over and see what we do and see how we do it. So, I don't know if anybody has any questions right now. I'd be happy to answer them.
Did you say how many you serve?
Well, we have 12 regular beds and the one crisis bedroom, so that's 13 individuals at a time, and we average about 45 people annually that pass through the program.
About how long would one person would stay in the program, from start to exit? How many months?
Well, everyone's different. You know, people have different levels of illness and need. Statistically, it's 9 months. That changes depending on various factors like the availability of housing in Corvallis right now. Excuse me, housing is extremely difficult to come by and very expensive, and most of our clients who are lucky enough to obtain Social Security for the disability of mental illness get about $670 a month, and so the prospect of finding housing for them in a town like Corvallis, or really anywhere, is very difficult. Renting a halfway decent apartment and buying food and medication and clothing and so on $670 a month is virtually impossible. So, but we managed to work around that with rental subsidies from Housing and Urban Development that are available after a fairly long wait through the Lynn-Benton Housing Authority, and so it really varies. thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you.